Today we're catching some sun and waves with Norma Jean, a QHS member whose life is as vibrant and refreshing as a seaside breeze. What currents brought her to the sunny shores of the quantum shift? Let's surf behind the scenes to see the waves she's been riding.
Hello everyone, I'm Norma Jean, and I'm 77 years young. I say young because this best describes my attitude. After all, I am just a little girl with wrinkles. And I've always led an active lifestyle in spite of the trials and challenges I've encountered along my path. I grew up very much a tomboy in childhood, which led later in life to motorcycling, country roads, snow skiing, water skiing, taking flying lessons, cruising the Great Lakes, both in power boats and sailboats, from Port Clinton, Ohio, through Lake St. Clair and Lake Huron, along a chain of islands stretching from Tobermory, Ontario, to Mackinac Island, Michigan. While I've only ever owned small power boats myself, I had girlfriends who owned much larger boats with their husbands, and I was blessed to have traveled on board with them. Because of my love of outdoor sports, I gave up wearing any particular hairstyle decades ago in favor of just pulling my hair back into a ponytail because I couldn't stand wasting time fiddling with curling irons and hot rollers. Besides, I find this carefree hairstyle to be windproof, waterproof, and sometimes even 100 proof, but only when moosed, because I don't drink alcohol. I grew up where I was born in the now infamous Flint, Michigan, although I had moved away many decades before the water problems began there. It was a great place to live in the 50s and 60s. Flint is the home of General Motors and at least 13 GM plants in that area. Jobs were plentiful and guaranteed a comfortable living even for those at the time who had not yet graduated from high school. I grew up in a loving but troubled family, the oldest of 2 children. My younger sibling was 9 years younger than me, so I used to say we were only children together. My parents not only helped me to develop a good work ethic, a great sense of humor, but a deeply Christian faith, and also an appreciation for nature from our many vacations, camping in a tent around Michigan every summer. My first 10 years of life, my family lived a little less than a mile away from the Buick foundry, so my dad could walk to work at Buick, where he was a tool and die skilled tradesman. Consequently, soot was everywhere. In fact, my father washed the outside of our bungalow every summer, and he hand washed the inside walls every other year. And I remember the rinse water was always very black. No wonder then that I developed hay fever and asthma. Other than the soot, it was a generally safe neighborhood. Kids in my neighborhood were free to play outside without checking in very often, and were simply told either to come home at the 5 o'clock factory whistle or when the streetlights came on. I was quiet and studious during my time in public school. I couldn't read until I was in the 3rd grade. Although I had an excellent understanding of phonics, I also had an astigmatism, and I had trouble focusing and following words across each line. In 3rd grade, I began wearing glasses to correct this and discovered that, in fact, I could read. A whole new world opened up to me. The first book I picked up and read was Heidi, and I read it cover to cover in no time, in spite of it being several hundred pages long. After that, I read everything I could get my hands on. Nancy Drew mystery stories, airplanes and pilots who flew them like Jimmy Doolittle, and never imagined that one day I would actually work with his nephew at a local Michigan Air Base, where I taught an aviation-based curriculum for the Michigan National Guard. I also loved art and received full scholarships every summer to take classes at the Flint Art Institute. Both of my parents moved to Flint with their families a little before 1920, at the very beginning of the automobile era. My father immigrated from London, Ontario, and was the third generation in his family to retire out of Flint Buick, while my mother was a stay-at-home homemaker. My mother had a beautiful singing voice and an amazing vocal range. She performed both as a soloist and as part of a trio with a concert band. I remember her singing Ave Maria a cappella, but mostly we would sing together. Mom singing harmony, and I sing melody and play the guitar as we sang around the campfire. Mom's family arrived in Maryland sometime in the 1600s and were of English, Scottish, and Irish descent. They were farmers and pioneers who moved a little farther west each generation. Her father sold their farm in Missouri when they moved to Flint because my grandfather hated farming. He was more mechanically minded and ended up retiring out of Fisher Body Experimental with only an 8th grade farm education. My dad's mother was born near Arnhem and Oosterbeek in the Netherlands. Grandma was killed by a drunk driver along with my 2 cousins when I was quite young. Dad's grandfather was a Norwegian steamship captain in Gravenhurst, Ontario. After immigrating there from Norway around 1870. During World War II, my father joined the Seabees, a Navy construction battalion, and saw active duty both in Alaska and then later in the South Pacific. Little wonder that I grew up loving water and loving life in the Great Lakes state. 1 year after graduating from high school, I had enough college credit hours to begin substitute teaching. My first day as a substitute teacher at my former high school, there were kids I sat in class with the year before who wanted to know, "What are you doing back here? Did the University of Michigan reject you or what?" To which I replied, "No, as a matter of fact, I'm your teacher today. Sit down." I worked my way through college, beginning at age 15 when I got working papers, since my family was unable or unwilling to help me very much. 2 years of college was enough for a woman, I remember my father telling me, as he wanted me to begin paying room and board in order to live at home during the summer. This crushed my dream of becoming a medical doctor because loans for college were not as easy to come by then as they are now, and also required a cosigner, which my parents were not about to do. Change happens when we least expect it. When one door closes, another door will open, if you look for it, I remember my grandmother saying, and this advice has served me well. She also taught me to look beyond one's present circumstances, to rise above problems of the moment, and to look ahead creatively to the life you want in the future. Because of my experience substitute teaching, I found that I rather enjoyed teaching. Thus began a wonderfully creative 34.5-year career adventure. I taught everything from middle school science to teaching kindergarten, which was my assignment the year of my divorce, Quite frankly, I didn't know what to do with little people. They couldn't read, write, or even line up. They piled up. Finally, I ended up teaching 5th grade in a gifted program, coaching the Science Olympiad, and producing a Broadway musical, You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, with my 5th graders belting out the solos. My first 5 years of retirement, I taught an aviation-based curriculum at a local air base. This began when I volunteered one summer for a Michigan National Guard youth program for Detroit middle school students. I loved kids and I also liked airplanes, so I volunteered. And never imagined that a year later I would become the lead instructor. During my teaching career, I spent my summers enjoying lakefront living in a little cottage I rented year-round on Lake St. Clair, the Great Little Lake, approximately 18 miles in length. Then I found a vacant waterfront lot nearby, so I sold my boat to put a down payment on the lot. There would be other boats one day, I told myself. About the time I wanted to begin building a house, the mortgage interest rates hit an unbelievable 18.5%. Thank you, Jimmy Carter. At that rate, I couldn't even afford to pay the lot off, let alone build a house. Thus began my next grand adventure, a 15-year project to build and then to decorate my own home from the business end of a hammer. It's called sweat equity. When I started building my house, I was a full 6 feet tall, just like my Norwegian great-grandmother. Now, however, I'm only 5'7". This will give you some idea of the condition of my spine. I was diagnosed with severe spinal stenosis in several places in my back. My next job was my most rewarding and also the most bittersweet, being caregiver to 3 elderly family members until each passed away. I experienced many useful lessons living through the numerous doctor's appointments, hospitalizations, and declining health with them in their final days. I also learned to look for humor, even in life's most serious moments. You can usually find something funny to laugh about, and laugh we did. After all, joy is one of the fruits of the Spirit. Which brings me now to my present health issues. As a child growing up in the 50s, we had all of the usual childhood diseases back then. Chicken pox, 3-day measles, mumps, German measles, a strep infection or two, several episodes of pneumonia. Later, when I had a severe bout with Epstein-Barr virus or mononucleosis, my doctor told me that my blood work showed a ratio of 10,000 white blood cells to every 1 red blood cell, a ratio he had only previously seen in leukemia patients. In the years that followed, I also had symptoms of several autoimmune conditions: rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's disease, a rare skin condition called granuloma annulare, and Sjogren's. More recently, I have also had shingles from the chickenpox virus 5 times. The first time was the worst because I had it on my face, which was extremely painful. I spent the whole summer that year in a dark bedroom away from sunlight, which I was told might damage my vision. In 2001, I was driving on I-75 when traffic stopped and I stopped. but the 16-year-old driver behind me didn't stop and rear-ended my little car with his daddy's big sedan. The car I was driving was totaled, and my neck was sore from the whiplash injury. It seemed minor enough at the time, but this was the beginning of what would become a major health issue. My active, adventurous life came to an abrupt halt a little later that year when I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. My body was racked with pain, and I had trouble remembering things. The first thing I did was go out and get a dog. I needed something to get me up and out the door, whether I felt like it or not, I reasoned. Little did I know just how active life would be with a working breed dog. My Portuguese water dog, Hunter Bubbles, was a challenge. Training her was unlike training any other dog I had ever owned, because this breed has the ability to think independently, problem solve, and voice their opinion of how they think things should be going. And as I began to adjust with life with fibromyalgia, we trained each other. In 2006, brought another injury from an auto accident when my car was hit by a big truck. The airbags didn't go off because of the impact from the side. Tag team orthopedic surgeons put pins in my broken wrist, while the plastic surgeons worked on my head and face. The wrist healed and the pins eventually came out, but the upper part of my face and part of my scalp remain numb, and I have permanent hair loss in that area. The tibia plateau fracture in my right knee healed, but the cartilage did not, which led to my first total knee replacement surgery and also my second total knee replacement surgery. At the time, I was my mother's caregiver. For a while, I thought my mother and I might become roommates together in a nursing home. But as it was, I was the only one in the nursing home on 3 separate occasions. I fought my way back to mobility 3 times. First, the tibia plateau fracture, followed by 2 total knee replacements, each requiring months of painful rehabilitation. Little did I realize 3 more rehabilitations were ahead. In 2016, I was blindsided by the diagnosis of kidney cancer in my one good kidney. The other kidney had been injured by a kidney infection decades earlier. Kidney cancer treatment usually involves removing the whole kidney, but with my other kidney severely damaged, this was not an option as far as I was concerned. It would have meant dialysis for the rest of my life, and the active life that I had always known would be lost forever. So, I busied myself with online research and discovered a new technique called cryosurgery, which urology surgeons were beginning to use to kill the tumor in situ by using extreme cold instead of removing the whole kidney. And I was willing to tolerate a bit of increased risk of the cancer returning for the promise of extending my quality of life. The surgery went well and I began to heal. However, my body rejected the absorbable sutures, and 6 months later I had a huge incisional hernia that ran between my belly button and my diaphragm. In 2017, this led to incisional hernia repair surgery with mesh. A year later, in 2018, after tripping over my dog and falling headfirst into the end of a wall, where the 2x4s are tripled up, I fractured 3 vertebrae in my neck. I have included a photo of my neck x-ray because now the pain in my neck is at times excruciating and leaves me crying myself to sleep at night. The neck pain has now spread to both shoulders because of the pressure on the nerves in my neck. Recently, in 2022, following a viral infection, I was diagnosed with psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. The psoriasis is very uncomfortable to live with because of the intense itching when the plaques are red, raw, and inflamed, which disrupts my sleep at night. At this point in life, my mobility is very limited due to severe, non-diabetic, no diabetes, neuropathy in both feet and lower legs. Both sensory nerves and motor nerves are affected, and thus muscles that the nerves are supposed to control are becoming paralyzed. So my doctor wants me to use a walker everywhere I go, which I refuse to do. Instead, I choose to walk with a cane in each hand because I can get around much faster this way. I just can't walk and carry things. I have included a photo of me walking my Portuguese water dog using my electric mobility scooter. Trying to walk a 53-pound dog without an electric scooter would mean that I would be only one rabbit or squirrel away from disaster, as my dog is very prey-driven and she can rip me right off my feet, which she has. The family doctor that I had for over 30 years gave me some parting medical advice before my final visit with her. And that was, stay off of ladders, is what she told me. I have included a photo of me on a ladder this past summer, painting my front porch wearing a hospital gown over my clothes to protect my clothing. This is the best use I can think of a hospital gown. Let's see, what else? 2 unsuccessful bunion surgeries, a retina problem in one eye, cataracts in both eyes, so that reading anything online or on the road while driving is difficult and exhausting. I no longer can drive at night. On the positive side of my health, my hearing is 128% normal. Why, I can hear a clock ticking at night on the opposite side of the house, and I have been known to place the noisy clock out in the garage so I can get some sleep. I find it interesting that the 2 ships that first brought my mom's ancestors to North America, the Dove and the Ark, when they arrived, they both went boldly into the unknown, armed with little else but hope for a better life. Like them, I too have hope in the QArc healing bed for a totally healed new life and a do-over. Perhaps I will fulfill my dream of becoming a doctor and healing people, which was my plan when I first entered college. Only now I would help others to complete healing and wellness using frequencies. I especially look forward to the simple joy of walking, completely pain-free and without a cane in each hand to keep my balance. And I imagine myself walking as a tourist, traveling to exotic locations for a do-over of my first 20 years of retirement, which mostly I spent in and out of hospitals and nursing homes recovering from illnesses and accidents. Thank you for listening to my prequel, and I look forward to seeing each of you on the other side.
Join us on the prequel, where every story matters and every voice is heard. Because here at QHS, we're all about healing, learning, and growing together.